Hello. It's me and Micah again. This time we're doing something a little different. This is a little game that I found, and by found, I mean I saw someone else find it and thought, that looks like fun. That looks like a lot of fun. I like chess. I'm not good at it. I know more than people who don't know anything about it, and I know less than people who know how to play. Um, but I can conceptualize bizarre concepts relatively easily. So, 5D chess with multiversal time travel appeals to me quite a lot. Um, I'm actually here to talk about some stuff, just in general, and Micah has no idea what I'm even going to be talking about. So he'll be the perfect person to ask questions when he doesn't understand anything. This video might take a little bit. I'm not sure how long. We're just gonna kind of. Oh, it's making me. It's yelling at me. I'm just gonna kind of explain stuff at a pace, and hope I don't go too fast. So when the damage received channel was initially conceived, the main purpose of it was to be a place for us to upload our um our tabletop RPG sessions. We've actually been recording them for years. We've just never uploaded them anywhere because there was supposed to be quote unquote editing done to them that never got done. Um, Recently, we've started playing Vampire the Masquerade. And by recently, I mean like 6 or 7 weeks ago, over Discord. Um, our friend Joey got deployed and is currently in Africa. Um, you're making me make decisions here. Um, our friend Skylor moved out of state last year, and he's currently living in the middle of nowhere. And then me and Craig are both still living here in Alaska. So the four of us get together on Saturdays when it's pretty much early morning for Sky. It's relatively late night for me and Craig, and it's like 10 a.m. for Joey on his one day off, and we play Vampire for a little bit. Now, for those of you who don't know, Vampire, oh shoot, uh, Vampire is, Vampire is a game published by White Wolf, right? It came out a long time ago, and by a long time ago, I mean like 20 years ago. Well, actually 30 years ago, almost.
The original came out in 1991.
Yeah, so almost 30 years ago. Um, and we're currently playing Vampire the Masquerade 20th Anniversary Edition, which, as far as I'm concerned, is the best edition. The original edition was very good. It was very, very good. The problem was it was a bit. It was very good, and the further attempts in the future to replicate its success went extremely poorly. Um, so the 20th edition came out a little while back, relatively recently, and it is pretty much a recreation of the original game with a few things that people liked changed. Um, so
I forgot about
it's
that.
yeah, it's kind of like an updated version of the old ones. Um, Now I'm recording them. I have them stored on my computer. I need to do a small amount of editing. I have pretty much basically blanket stated that I will not be doing much editing. I will be doing very minimal editing. Essentially, what I'm going to be doing is chopping out the beginning bits where we're just talking, not playing. Probably chopping out the end bits and listening for and going back to where we took breaks and cutting those out, and that's pretty much it. There is more stuff I could do and probably should do to make them good, but I'm lazy and I have a lot going on. I have a full-time job, and I just don't have time for that kind of stuff. At least not like I used to. So, ergo, minimal editing. Those will I'll hopefully be doing that soon. I have some really good editing software. I just need to format the files correctly. Once I start uploading those, I don't know how quickly I want to upload them because I need to get them out relatively quickly, but they're fairly long, so I don't want to just dump like 5 of them onto the channel and just have like 15 hours of content go up in one day, because no one would ever get through those. But essentially, oh God, now you've gone and done it. But essentially, it's sort of like an introductory thing, right? Because Craig has never played a White Wolf game before. Both Joey and I have had very minimal exposure to White Wolf games. We're both familiar with the concepts and some of the major themes and most of the rules and how stuff works. But we have had very limited experience actually playing. Now, what do I want to do? Not that. I want to do. Now, this was sort of like a learning game, or a game for us to learn a bit. Now Craig pretty much has a pretty good handle on what he's doing. Joey and I are like, okay, so a lot of the assumptions that we had that were proven correct, some of the ones weren't. We've learned, we kind of know what's going on, and obviously Sky has always known what he was doing. Now, we are going to transition at some point in the future out of this campaign and into a new one. The campaign that's going to go up is just going to be like, whatever, right? But the thing that we're transitioning into is going to be a very large project. Essentially, we were like, hey, we really like this, so we should try the other settings, right? We should play werewolf, we should play mage, we should play changeling, because like I wanted to do changeling, and Sky wanted to also do like werewolf at some point, and Joey, as usual, it was fairly indifferent to the whole matter. So we were already planning on running those. We just didn't know how or when, or have any ideas much beyond that. Then, while we were recording this last Saturday, during a break, there was a bit of an epiphany. And we pretty much... Sky decided that when he rolled into the next vampire game, he wanted to use the new Chronicles system from Vampire 5th Edition, which just came out and sucks. Most of it's terrible, but he said, hey, this Chronicles thing is pretty cool. Let's just steal that, but you run it but do everything else in the old system. I was like, okay, how does this work? After a brief explanation, the way it was kind of pitched, from my understanding of it, was everyone kind of gets together on session 0, and instead of just building their characters, everyone works together to build the world and the NPCs and all this other stuff. So I was like, okay. Yeah, game, I know, it's my turn. Now, since our current vampire game is taking place in South Africa, and I figured, hey, if we're going to run like each of the games, there's like 5 of them, right? The 5 of the core ones. So I was like, why don't we run each one on different continents? And Joey was like, I think it'd be more interesting if you run them all in the same spot, or relatively close to each other, so that way like they had an effect on each other, right? Um, and so me, in my stupid brain, went, hey, that thing Sky said and that thing Joey said, we can combine them. What if we used both of the. What if we used both the Chronicle system and also put all of the games we were planning on running in the same spot? And then instead of just using the Chronicle system for Vampire, we use the Chronicle system for all of the games at once. And everyone seemed to like that. Joey, again, appeared rather indifferent, but everyone else seemed pretty on board with the idea. It's a giant pain in the ass, essentially. But I think we're all pretty stoked to see how it turns out. Now, this is a pretty massive workload, and we already kind of had the plan to shift who was doing what, right? For example, we knew that Sky was going to run Vampire, but it was kind of dumped on me, since I know the most about it, to run Changeling. And then we're like, okay, what if Joey like handled Mage? And we're like, okay, so we were like, oh, we'll all run the different games. And part of the Chronicle system was that you pass around the storyteller card, right? Each person gets to take a turn telling a story, like in the world. And I was like, hey, how about instead of doing that just for Vampire, right? What if we do that for all of them? But instead of like everyone passing around the storyteller card in the Changeling game, when it becomes my turn to tell a story, we shift perspectives to the Changeling characters. And then when it becomes Joey's turn, we shift perspective to the Mage characters, right? But since there's so many games, we're each running 2. So Sky will be handling Vampire the Masquerade and Werewolf the Apocalypse. I will be handling Changeling the Dreaming and Demon the Fallen. And Joey will be handling Mage the Ascension and Hunter the Reckoning. It's pretty much a giant undertaking. We're each essentially planning out 2 full campaigns and interconnecting all 6 of them. And we're planning to run all 6 of them essentially simultaneously. If that sounds like a lot of work, it is. And I hope that literally anyone bothers to listen to it, because it's going to be a lot of work. We're doing it mostly because we think it's going to be fun and interesting. But boy, I hope literally anyone enjoys it, because it's going to be quite the thing. Craig is not going to run anything. He is not confident in such a thing, and not to sound mean or anything, we are not confident in his ability to run anything, which is fine by him, by his own admission. So, not being mean or anything. Are there any major questions that pop immediately into your head, Micah?
Okay. Why don't you just run all that by me?
I unplugged my headphones 40 minutes ago.
Okay, so let me get this straight. I think I've got it. So you want to start a new campaign, but you want it to be tied along with the other campaign. You want to use stuff in the new edition What, add them to the older edition?
Yes, we're taking a few small things from the 5th edition stuff for use in the 20th anniversary edition versions of things, except for Hunter and Demon, which didn't get 20th anniversary edition like adaptations.
Okay. Hmm.
Yeah, it's a pretty big project.
Oh.
Each like story will probably run 2 to 4 sessions. Um, and so essentially the way it'll work is Skies will start off and he will do a vampire story when we will play our vampire. The rest of us will play vampire characters for 2 to 4 sessions. It'll swap over to me. I will run a game of Changeling. Everyone else will play their Changeling characters for 2 to 4 sessions, while I tell the next like a part of the story, like the first part of that story, right? Then Joey will run Mage, and we'll the rest of us will play Mage characters for 2 to 4 sessions, however long it takes, and then we'll be swapping back over to Guy, where he will be, where he will then run Werewolf, and then it'll go to me, and I'll run Demon, and then we'll go to Joey a second time to run a Hunter for the first time. Then it'll come.
Okay. Oh, you got another one?
Yeah. Then it'll finally come back around to Sky to run Vampire the second time, with the same characters that we had the first time.
So you're gonna have 5 campaigns running?
6. 3 of us will be running 2 each.
Okay, so you have 6, and there's what, 5 characters? Five characters?
There will be 3 characters in 3 player characters in each campaign. Because we also have Craig. So, like, for example, when Sky's running his vampire campaign, I will have a vampire, Joey will have a vampire, and Craig will have a vampire. Then when it gets to me, I'll be running Changeling. Sky will have a Changeling, Joey will have a Changeling, and Craig will have a Changeling. Craig's just going to be playing in all 6 campaigns. Essentially.
So, okay. So, effectively, you're going to have 24 different characters in one world? Or setting, or however you want to call it. Right?
There will be 18. Yeah, because Joey, Sky, and I will each have 4 because we're not going to make characters for our own campaigns. So we'll each have 4, and Craig will have 6.
Yeah. So.
Okay.
So I've completely screwed myself over. Down. like what, move 2? Yeah. I have the wrong piece on back on move. Uh, so what's your oh, outside of trying to basically move stats and abilities from one version to another, what are you most concerned that's going to be?
What I'm most concerned about being a problem is the probably the worst thing that can happen is a player character in one quote unquote campaign actually running into a player character from another quote unquote campaign that is still controlled by them, right? It would be one thing for, like, if, for example, if someone's character, like if someone's werewolf character was out in the wilderness, like went off to go do their own thing, and they happened to stumble into something that someone else's changeling character could do. We could do a special interaction where one person plays their changeling, the other one plays their werewolf, and they meet, right? That would be interesting. But there might be a problem where someone's, like, for example, werewolf character runs into their own changeling character. That would be a problem.
Why?
Because you can't you don't want to ever role play with yourself.
I mean, it has interesting possibilities.
Yes, the possibilities are interesting, but there are some problems with it. Namely, that if you have a werewolf and a changeling who run into each other, and you get to decide what both of them do, irregardless of what that character would normally do, you can power game quite hard, especially in White Wolf. Do you have any idea how terrifying it would be if you had let's say, a mage character and a demon character, and you had allowed them to, and they were allowed to meet, and you got to decide what those two characters did together? You could create an unstoppable force the likes of which the world would be unprepared to handle, and quite possibly take over a small portion of the globe.
Now, I mean, from your point of view, this seems like a bad. From my point of view, I would encourage it.
I don't know. That's a quick way. As interesting as it would be, it is a quick way to end a campaign.
Not necessarily.
As far as in White Wolf, it would go south quickly.
But I mean, well, it depends upon the player.
It does.
Depends upon. It depends upon what the particular player's mindset, the group players' desires, what they want out of it, and how the DM wants the flow of the game. Because in theory, if your player wants that, and as a group of players, they're okay with some shenanigans happening for a short period of time, you can run with that. And then as a DM, you know, there are always ways to create a greater power.
It's true. Oh, that's what I'm doing. I was wondering why I put you in check. I was like, where am I attacking?
What am I supposed
All right.
to do with this?
Two turns back, 2 tiles forward. That's diagonal. Okay, that makes sense. Yeah, okay.
It makes sense, but what am I supposed to do against that?
What you just did? Yeah, I mean, that's true. I mean, I would not be worried about Sky or Joey doing something like that along those lines. I'd be most worried about Craig, but even then, I'm not that concerned about it because it's pretty easy to talk him into doing what you want to do. It'd be like, especially where like, hey, we're recording this. We want it to be interesting. He's like, oh, okay, just tell me what I like, what to do here, and to be like, what would make sense, what would be interesting, that kind of sort of thing, right?
I mean, I don't like. Again, it kind of how you, because obviously the DM, arguably, he has a vision, and depending upon how both you as the DM and the players want it to go, kind of how you should flow it. Usually, whenever I run games, I usually let my players know, I'm like, hey, this is how I'm going to do it. I don't care what you. If you can somehow manage to work the system to basically create a small global invasion force and just start conquering continents at a time, go for it. Because either at one point the dice is going to betray them, and then it will lead for hysterical pastimes, or at some point you'll be able to, write in either a nether power of equal or greater that now threatens, or you can just be like, yeah, you totally took over the globe, and now we're going to jump like 10 years in the future. We are the sovereign rulers. What do you guys want to do? So your kingdom is currently being threatened by these off-worlders. You could just keep getting crazier and crazier. But that's just how I like games.
True, and that would be much easier to do in D&D. White Wolf would be much trickier.
I could see that.
And if I was the only DM, I'd be far less concerned. But since this is such a massive amount of work, and 3 of us are doing it, if one person fucks up too bad, then it might cause significant issues for the other 2 who put in a lot of work, you know? So I don't ever want things to get like too balls to the wall crazy, right? Because White Wolf is very good at dealing with these very large concepts and having very cosmically important moments without getting crazy, if you know what I mean, right? Especially each system is different, obviously. But for example, if you're playing if you're in a werewolf game, right? It's not uncommon for you to be literally fighting for the fate of the world, but you're still just another werewolf, right?
Gotcha.
So it's not, but if you become I don't know, a demon werewolf, where your powers combine or whatever in the best possible manner because you were able to game it like that, then things can get pretty nutty. Obviously, it shouldn't be too big of a concern for that since we're all.
Well, I mean, at the same time, like you said, 2 forces coming together. There's a rare chance of it happening, and if it does happen, it also, if the campaign is in a situation where you're like, okay, I don't really want to derail the other player's experience that they're currently building up to. She's like, hey, this happened. Don't do this, please.
Yeah.
And most people are like, I'm okay with that.
Yeah, there will be 2 other literal storytellers playing at the same time that will be conscientious of the same things. So it shouldn't be too much of a problem. Hopefully. it obviously is possible. And plus, even just from a perspective of a player, having to play 2 characters that are talking to each other by yourself can, if it's a quick conversation, then it's whatever. But a sort of long conversation that you're having with multiple people that you control can get boring. Yeah. Really boring. For other people and you. It's just not really a fun experience, for anyone necessarily involved.
Well, I'm going to get rid of that piece. Now it's out of my way. begin my master plan of not knowing what I'm doing. Wait. Why are you doing this to me, game? No! It won't let me castle.
Wait.
Why can't I castle? That was my plan, testing.
Yeah, why? Oh, because you'd be putting yourself in check.
Both of them?
One of them is already castled. The king in the top game is currently castled already. The king in the bottom game, if you castled, you would put yourself in check because of my bishop.
Oh, because of... Wait, no. What's castling him? Or what's putting him in check?
My bishop.
Which... Okay, we're talking about the top board, right?
Your top board, my bottom board, unless you flop perspective.
Right. Okay. Your bottom board.
Yeah.
Okay. So I can't castle. Why can I not castle to either side?
Because in either direction, I have a bishop immediately threatening the square that you'd end up on. The king is only going to move one space in a direction, and the rook will end up on the other side of them. So if you move left or right, I would be putting you in check.
I don't see your bishop. Which bishop are you speaking of?
I have two bishops. One cover. Yes. Each bishop is covering the darker square to either side of your king. So if you move one square left or one square right, you'd be putting yourself in check. In either case,
castle, your king moves 2.
You castle, your king moves 1, 2. It does move 2. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know why.
That's what I'm saying. You can't castle out of check, but I'm not in check. I'm so confused.
Yeah, you'd be castling through check.
Unless that's a rule that I never knew.
I mean, that doesn't make any sense either.
The problem with video games.
Yeah, I have nothing on my top board that'd be threatening those squares. The only thing I have on the bottom board is those
and the only thing I could think of would be time travel, but obviously you can't. My castle would be in the future, so you couldn't time travel back to it. So I don't know. I don't know if I like the castle, but let's do it.
Well, you've left me with really only one choice here, and it's a choice I don't like. Honestly, you can just sit there, whatever. Not do anything useful.
You have a queen over me, so I really don't see myself getting very far of it.
If I do that, then I could do that. That puts that there. That's useless to me. If I go here, that puts that there. Puts on that square, and I could... Wow. I could go... Okay. Yeah.
That's your castle.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, I want to also sort of briefly cover what is like some things about each system.
Castle.
If anyone's interested in how a Vampire game is run, I will be uploading the entire South Africa campaign. Oh, by the way, I should probably mention, all these games, we wanted to run them in a relatively similar area, a relatively close area, right? So we picked the entire continent of Australia.
Sure.
There's a reason for that. There's actually a good number of reasons for that. Australia is a really weird place to run any one of those games, let alone all of them. Things just work a little... So no matter what continent you end up on, things are going to work differently. But Australia is especially different for each of the different settings. And I'm excited to see how certain things sort of pan out.
Careful. Because he would put it right there. Gosh.
If anyone's interested in, again, understanding how, God damn it, in how a Vampire game is running, I'll be uploading the Africa campaign. I'm in check twice. Fucking Christ. Wait, what the hell is putting me in check? What? Ah, right. 2 tiles left, 1 turn back. Okay, that makes sense. How do I...
You have to warp.
Yeah,
Piece.
no, I can't take that piece. I mean, I can't.
Checkmate,
Sorry,
isn't it?
I might be able to. No, not by a long shot. I would have to take that piece because I can't.
But from what?
Um,
Don't think you have anything that can time travel to that spot.
no, I'm not at the moment, but I can make one.
Oh, you're gonna have to create a third path.
Yeah, because I haven't created any timelines yet.
That's why it's not checkmate. Oh no, my biscuit! You can't do that.
Oh, because it would be
Can
your
do
move.
that. I just have checkmate.
No, I can't do that because it would be your move on that board, and you could choose
Yep.
to take my king. Optionally. So I can't move that piece.
You'll have to
in that way.
Your bottom board, you have to move the king, unless you can time travel something to take that.
No, I can block it with the bishop if I need
block,
to.
Yeah.
Which I'd prefer to do. Okay, well then how do I salvage this situation? Right, so we're also playing 5D chess while I'm explaining all this stuff. Not necessarily my most well thought out plan. This requires a lot of brain power, but I'm working on it.
Let me win. Just concede. We'll start a new one.
Oh, you don't have any queens. You lost both of them.
Yeah.
Okay.
I took one of your. Well, I missed it because I was looking at the other board and I wasn't watching the top board, and so you stole my queen, and so then I just kamikazed my other queen into you, so that you didn't have 2 queens.
Right. How do I resolve this situation? It'll be your turn.
Remember that one game where you had to create like 5 timelines and then you just gave up because and then they finally gave checkmate?
Okay, so you are going to go back. Yeah, back 1 turn to the left 2 squares. Moving my king will not change the fact that he was in that position on your last turn. Therefore,
my understanding of the game's code of logic, you basically you can create 1 timeline in the past in an attempt to get a piece to this present that can then parallel jump to take the knight. Is your basically your
hang on. Hey, check this shit out. Yeah, no, you still get me because it'll be your turn there, and you have the option to move. How the fuck do I take this knight?
You have to actually. I don't see. That's what I feel like because you have to move a piece off your bottom board to the pass. But you can't move a piece off the bottom board because then I have checkmate on the bottom board.
Well, I could. This thing is, if I move a piece from one board to another, that's my move on both. So if I'm going to move a piece between the 2 boards, that would have to solve both of my problems simultaneously.
Did you just create another split if you didn't?
Yeah, if I create another split, it doesn't matter because you have me in check twice. If you had me in check once, it wouldn't be a problem because I could create another timeline and get myself at a check on one board, simultaneously splitting off another timeline, therefore making it your move on a board where I'm not in check, my move on a board while I am in check, but moving the past backwards so I don't have to respond to it.
So I'm saying, are we dumb that we're missing a piece that you can move?
So,
because in my mind,
do this.
anytime you go back in time with either board, you'll be put in check on that board. The only way to kill the knight is with a parallel jump currently. And your bottom board does not have a parallel jump to kill the knight. And you also have to block or remove my castle on the bottom board. So either you have to parallel jump or time travel with the bottom board to eventually solve your top board problem. But then it would give you the bottom board will still be in check.
I mean, I think I'm missing an obvious solution here.
It has to. And that would be it.
Right. This moves the pass back. I'm no longer in check on that board. And I don't have to respond to this board just yet. But if I do, it'll be your turn. So if I do respond to this board, it'll have to be in such a fashion that I take...
Did you hit the back turn button?
Yeah, because, I mean, okay, so...
I forgot that was a thing. Yeah, I mean, unless there's something we're missing. Can you... time travel with both kings.
That'll create this split where I'm in check.
I think that's the only way. Is you throw your bottom board king in the past like you did. I bring it back to the present. You throw your top board king into the past again. You avoid both checks. Right? Because you can create two, right? You can create two back to back.
No, because you're not threatening my current king. You're threatening my past king. So I need to make a split in which I can take that piece.
Wait. Can you... What is the king's movement in time travel?
1?
Yeah.
You can still only move
thing would be
1.
if you could get your king, your current king on the bottom board that's in check, to the spot below my castle in your top board in the past, then you could just move, then you could parallel jump.
Yeah, that's what I want to do, but I can't because he's being blocked by the past king and queen who are in that spot.
Yeah.
If I jump to the top board, it creates a split in which I'm in check.
Yeah.
So I can't do that. So I have to. So I can't time travel and dimension hop.
Yeah,
with my
I think
king.
the reason it's not giving you checkmate is because you can time travel that one.
Yeah,
king
if
back.
I do this, I pass it to your turn. You take a move, and then I think I lose.
I think so.
Yeah. Well played.
I really thought I had lost it there.
I did.
Screwed my pawn up, and I couldn't move either of my bishops for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, gosh dang it, why was that the pawn I chose to move?
Yeah, so this was actually a very straightforward game of 5D chess. We only created one split until the very end, and the second split didn't have really any impact.
Which really, all the second split did, because I moved a knight back and then back again. So
yeah.
I never piled anything onto one board. I just wanted to have some extra flair because I was losing it on the one board. 2 points. So, there you go.
Yeah. So I guess I'll take So now now that I have some thinking brain power left, I will go ahead and do the thing that I was going to do initially, and talk briefly about each setting being a loose term that I'm using here, because I guess they're called I actually don't know what they're called. I'm pretty sure they're called settings. Even though that's really confusing considering it's all the same setting. Um,
Yeah.
for example, werewolf and vampire would be called. There's the vampire setting and the werewolf setting, even though they're in the same setting.
They're in the same world, but there's the same setting, but two campaigns.
Yes, there are different rule books. Um, Essentially, like vampire's pretty straightforward. Hopefully, people are already kind of vaguely familiar with it, and if you're not, again, like I said before, I'll be uploading the Africa campaign, so you'll be able to get an idea of what's going on there, or at least how a vampire is played.
Now, I just crossed my mind this thought because you were concerned about players meeting up too easily.
I mean,
Now,
just
I don't
meeting
know
themselves.
what the whole background and how much editing you do to the background
It,
or the setting of the world, but you could have it set for your players to role play that generally most of the different class races whatever you hate the other ones or
I'm.
like particular ones hate particular ones.
I mean, World of Darkness is already there. That's already the case. None
And you
of
could just
them
kind of
none of them tend to work together. That rarely happens. And when it does, there's usually a decent reason behind it. Like, for example, world's ending, right? So the werewolves let them like if the werewolves discover a threat that they know they can't handle, but they know a mage might. They might approach the mage and be like, "Hey, listen up. Here's the problem. Please solve it. Otherwise, world ends. We all die." And that can happen.
is something you can actually write in as part of the adventure that there will be times, depending upon the choices made by the players, that they might unleash a power greater than they can deal with.
Oh, that's
and they
easy.
deliberately, in both campaigns, will have to deliberately make sure their characters get to the same place at the same time to meet up to help stop this.
That it might be something that is like that might even be something you need to write in. That might just be unavoidable considering how World of Darkness tends to work.
Well, but I meant that. I don't know.
Yeah.
Like in my mind, because I was asking, that was like, what were you most concerned about? In my mind, that seems like a great opportunity for ingenuity in accidental writing.
I mean, yeah, it's certainly possible. There's so many possibilities with how things could go, which is why we're all pretty excited. Anyway, well, me and Sky are. Joey again pretty indifferent. Craig is a bit trepidatious about having to learn all these new systems, even though they're really similar to each other. So going from one to another isn't too big a deal.
You use the term system, but it's the difference is more in what rate class you are than like the way the world functions.
Correct. The world. Okay, so the world will always be functioning the same way. However, each sort of quote unquote class has its own view of the world that's rather limited in its scope. So, like for example, if you're playing in a vampire game, you're not going to know who the worm is, you're not going to know who the wild is, and you're not going to know who the weaver is. You are going to be mostly unaware of the global conflicts that happen. You'll be mostly concerned with the politics in your individual city. Every once in a while, you might run into werewolves who are terrifying, rampaging monsters who bloody murder every vampire they come across without asking any questions, and you see them as like barbarians who live in the forests, who are engines of destruction and need to be avoided at all costs, right? Meanwhile, you get over to a werewolf game, and what's actually happening in the cities and the politics don't really matter to you whatsoever. You're mostly just concerned with preventing the end of the world, and every time you come across a vampire, they smell like worm spawn, so you kind of want to kill them. So it's pretty important that you kill them, or so you think. Because they definitely smell like agents of the enemy who are bringing about the apocalypse. Not that you know that they're not, or not that your character knows that they're not. So like, it's just like it's very rarely do any of the quote unquote classes interact with each other on anything other than um, hostile terms.
Right.
Mostly because they think each other is a problem. Not that anyone is necessarily wrong, but no one is definitely no one is right. In Wall of Darkness, there is no being correct. Everyone's wrong somehow, one way or another.
Gotcha.
World is grim. The world's coming to an end, and everyone's just doing their best to sort of help stave that off in one form or another. Now, as I have already described how vampires and werewolves tend to work. Not that they can't go outside of those spheres. It's just rare. We will probably be doing that because Sky tends to favor all of us tend to favor non-standard campaigns, right? We don't like to conform our games to the standard that other people have set. We like to do things weirdly and differently because we are weird and different.
Understandable.
Now, oh boy. So, mages are interesting, right? I know very little about mages, and Joey is going to be handling that whole side of things. So it'll probably be a bit before I learn about how mages work. I do know that the mages are they are simultaneously the most and the least powerful of the quote unquote classes.
You can see that, I suppose.
This is because they can do whatever they want to. Kind of. So the way mage powers work is they just decide they can do something and they can. But if someone else thinks they can't, then they can't. They can force their way through, but this generates something known as paradox. This is all extremely advanced mage terminology, but essentially, if a mage goes, "I can fly," then he can fly. But if you try flying through a town and a bunch of people see you and go, "Holy shit, that guy can't fly," well, then you can't. But you can and you can't. Therefore, you're creating paradox.
So the mage is just a Schrodinger cat.
Yeah. If you generate too much paradox, really bad shit happens to you and quite possibly to everything around you. Because the universe can and will fix itself.
Strange.
Now, changelings are interesting. I like changelings. I like changelings an awful lot. There's a multitude of reasons for this. Changeling is my personal favorite setting.
Oh boy.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
I really want to know why I can't move my king. Well,
so currently I'm
no way for me to take that bishop, and he is checking so far in the past. There's no way I can.
There is a way for you to take that bishop, but to take that bishop, you would need to move that knight, which would then put you in check again. That would be the only way to do it. And yeah, I'm attacking really so farther into the past than you can move your king to get out of it.
Yeah. The only pieces that could move there would be the queen or the rook, but both of them haven't moved, so there's no way they can go back.
Yeah, that was a pretty boring game. We'll do a more interesting one here. We'll create a bunch of splits. um, so there are lots of, I'll call them layers of reality in White Wolf, right? And when I say White Wolf, I'm talking about World of Darkness, the White Wolf setting. I don't want to get too complicated here. The vampires are primarily concerned with the main one. If you're just playing vampires, you just deal with the one that's the reality, right? And that's pretty much all you care about. If you're dealing with either mage or werewolf, you'll probably be dealing a lot with the Umbra. The Umbra is another plane of reality, one I don't really know that much about. Another layer on reality is one called the Dreaming, which is where changelings come from and where changelings can go. The Dreaming is fun. The Dreaming is crazy. The Dreaming is both the best dream, the most like awesome dream you've ever had, while simultaneously being the worst nightmare you've ever had, and shit goes crazy in the Dreaming. In a world where everything's gritty and dark and the world is coming to an end, if you want to play, if you want to go rescue Rapunzel from the castle, you can do that in the Dreaming. Everything can and does exist there, and it is only limited by human imagination. Now, there's also the second world, or probably more accurately, it's kind of like an amalgamation of different like afterlives. Boy, it's really hard to kind of explain this without going too much into the origin story of the entire White Wolf setting. But essentially, like, there's also Wraith. That was an important setting, one we're not using because it's kind of a pain in the ass, and I don't trust Craig to handle anyone's shadow. But there are lots of ghosts around World of Darkness as well, and they come from the sort of the first layer of the underworld. There's also the shadow layer, which I think mages can sometimes access, but usually only demons go there. And demons come from the abyss where they were trapped. Oh, what is this nonsense? All right, well, fine. I'm gonna do this.
Oh no.
Okay. So essentially, way back in the beginning, right, you had God, right? And God did the things that God does as far as you are familiar with them in the Bible for the most part. I'm in check? Jesus Christ. On turn 2!
No, that's one. Oh, yeah, it is turn 2.
Alright, I'll fix that problem. But the way things are kind of handled in White Wolf is a little different. For example, like to briefly summarize, God created the angels. The angels did most of the heavy lifting when it came to creating the actual Earth. They were just acting as they were told to. They made most stuff. Then one of them was looking at like the tapestry of everything and noticed that there was going to be a big problem. Like there was going to be big conflicts. Like things were going to go bad at some point for the humans, involving humans. Humans were kind of becoming sort of God's like failed experiment, or like he had this thing. He's kind of had what he envisioned them to be, and they were just not quite living up to it. And no matter what any of the angels did, they just weren't. doing what they were originally intended to do. So some of the angels were like, hey, we should warn them or take a more direct approach to getting them to where they need to be, because clearly things are going wrong, and we see this thing looming on the horizon in the future at some point where shit's going to be real bad. And some of the angels were like, well, we shouldn't act, because if we do, we might end up bringing about that event. And a bunch of people sort of asked God, but he just didn't he didn't really say anything. He didn't really respond. So eventually Lucifer is like, fuck it, I'll make the decision. We're going to go, and we're going to go down there, and we're going to do what we were told not to do, and that's tell the humans what they are and make them aware of of some of the underlying truths of reality. So they did that, and God wasn't very happy with that. And so war ended up breaking out, and obviously God won, and the fallen angels were cast into the abyss and locked in there. But for some reason, Lucifer was not. He was deliberately left out. So all of the fallen angels got to the abyss, were trapped there, and Lucifer wasn't there. So then they kind of splintered into a bunch of different factions who believed different things, none of which are true necessarily, but some of them are partly true. It's kind of difficult to explain, but essentially some of them were like, oh, he must have been locked in his own separate prison because he was too dangerous. Some were like, he was actually working for God and he tricked us intentionally, and there was a whole bunch. And then some were like, oh, this is how things were meant to be, and when we get out or whatever, things will be better. Right, but they were trapped in there for a really long time. Most of them went insane. Then there was an event in Vampire where the Ravnos Antediluvian woke up and started walking around. This was a big problem because the Ravnos Antediluvian was insane. Even more insane than the Malkavian Antediluvian, because the Ravnos Antediluvian could see the dreaming and manifest parts of it as illusions, which manifests itself in his bloodline as Chicancery, which, if you listen to the Africa campaign, comes up a lot, because I use it a lot because I'm playing a Ravnos. The Antediluvians are essentially the second generation vampires, the ones that Cain himself turned, or so the legends go, because it's the werewolves and the vampires both disagree quite a lot, because the vampires think that Cain was the first vampire, and the werewolves think that Cain was the first werewolf, and no one really knows the truth. Funnily enough, in Demon, they actually saw that happen, but they saw Cain murder Abel, but then they left before God passed his judgment on Abel, or on Cain, so they don't know which one's actually true. They don't even know, funnily enough. But the Antediluvians are extremely powerful. How powerful, you might ask? Well, the Ravnos Antediluvian woke up somewhere in Asia, probably near India, because that's where he's kind of the Ravnos are kind of based on near India cultures.
Yeah.
And basically an entire pack of Elder Garu, which are an entire pack of essentially the second tier of werewolves, showed up to fight him. Several of the Eastern vampire Methuselahs, which are the third generation vampires, one step down from Antediluvians, showed up to fight him, and they kind of ganged up and took this guy on, and they couldn't do a damn thing to him. He was just that powerful. They tore him to pieces so many times, but he just kept healing through it, and there's nothing they could do. and the Ravnos Antediluvian was only fighting with his fists.
Nice.
To basically put this into perspective, he's a vampire. Vampires don't fist fight. Especially not a Ravnos, because as I'm playing a Ravnos, I would know this. No Ravnos has any offensive capabilities whatsoever, right? Their main disciplines, their main clan disciplines are fortitude, which is like being kind of tanky, which is helpful, not something you typically focus on. Chicancery, which is illusions, and animalism, which is like talking to and possessing animals, right, and controlling them. This guy came out of the gate punching people, and he still was winning. So the technocracy, which are kind of like not quite evil, but the antagonists of the mage setting, took one look at this and went, "Oh shit, dog, that's a problem." So what they did was they summoned the ghost of the nuclear bomb that was dropped on Hiroshima, and dropped it on the Ravnos Antediluvian.
Nice.
They summoned a spirit nuke over his head. This nuke landed, and it did several things. First, it killed everyone who was fighting the Ravnos Antediluvian.
Good plan, good plan.
Second, it did not kill the Ravnos Antediluvian. He was actually relatively fine. He came walking out of that crater almost completely unscathed. Next, it generated a lot of paradox, which was a problem for the technocracy. And lastly, what it did was that power, the spirit nuke, punched a hole right through most of the layers of the nether realm, including a hole straight through the abyss, where all the demons were locked in. What ended up happening in that fight was the technocracy then had to take it another step up, and they essentially moved a bunch of satellites in the sky to reflect the sun's rays directly onto him, and that killed him. This generated a significantly more paradox, which would cause a lot of problems for the technocracy later down the line. Now, you might be asking, so what did those demons do? Well, they escaped. A significant number of them escaped, and there are now kind of holes in a lot of places. Sort of just around. And this is a major problem in a lot of places. What do I want to do? I want to do this. And I want to do this. So now demons... So basically, a hole was punched into the abyss, and demons were able to escape. Not many of them can all at once. And even as they sort of filter out, they get lost in this sort of mid-realm, and then they come out at different times. So while they're like, oh, you'd think all the demons come flooding through and start wreaking havoc. That's not really what happened. Demons started flooding through the hole, but they start coming out at different places and different times. Also, a demon can only manifest on Earth for a very brief amount of time without taking over a host body, which they do. So as you play a demon, you are creating both. You're basically, when you create a demon, you create two character sheets. You create a demon sheet and you create a human sheet, and you create essentially the demon that you are playing and the human that you possess. The demon, you create several points. You also have to worry about several points of their background. First, you have to decide what kind of angel they were, because all the demons were angels at one point, and all the angels kind of existed at the very beginning of the world and helped build Earth, essentially. So first you pick the kind of demon, the kind of angel you were, right? Then you kind of decide, okay, when I became a fallen, what did I do, right? Which legion did I join? Why did you join? What ideals were you fighting for? Was it the freedom of humanity, which most of them were? Was it this, that, or the other thing? There's a few ways you can do that. Yeah. Then after
go through pieces,
huh?
Bishops can go through pieces?
No. There's nothing between. So that pawn that's directly in front of the queen or the king, I don't need to move through. Because because that space is empty on the previous board, which is where I would end up. So that bishop would move one space down and one reality up to that empty spot. Then they'd move one space down and one reality up to the empty spot in front of the king, and then on that reality, and then they move one space down and one space up to take the king. Every space I would need to travel through from here to there is empty. Which is why you're in check in the first place. So you would need to either fill the spot in front of the king on the center timeline or the space behind the pawn on the second to bottom timeline, from my perspective. Yeah, like that. And once you've decided on all that for your demon, you then have to decide on how much being locked in the abyss affected you and how it did. And then you have finished your demon. Then you create a human, right? The human that you possess. Your demon gets out, it possesses a human, and now you have a merger of all of that demon history and this new human, right? Now, all the angels at one point were good and then became evil. When you possess a human, you get their memories, you get all their emotions, you get a lot of their mannerisms. Even though your fallen angel has all of this history, you are essentially a 50-50 split between human and demon. And all this human emotion and history and perspective reminds the fallen angels of the time they were good and why they started fighting in the first place. And then you have this internal struggle of demon and angel and human and what this sort of means. And typically most player demons are trying to redeem themselves. You can do an evil campaign if you want to, where you're just ravaging the earth. But typically you're trying to become good again.
Yeah, makes sense.
And it creates a very interesting dichotomy. Demons are very powerful, obviously, but they require a lot in order to use their powers. So it becomes this big investment that you're dealing with.
Okay.
Changelings, right, are made of dreams, essentially, an imagination. A long time ago, the dreaming and the human world were very closely connected, pretty much overlapping. Then humans started discovering science, and eventually the autumn world, which is what the changelings generally refer to as the dreaming, or what the dreaming is referred to as by changelings, and the mortal realm got split. This was called the Sundering, and ended the Mythic Age. Now, the ruling class changelings saw this coming ahead of time and retreated to a spot in the dreaming called Arcadia before this happened. Then, boom, split. This had a few effects. First, basically what happened was all the nobles ran away. Then the split happened, and all the commoner changelings were stuck on Earth. And they very quickly, without any connection to the autumn world, started becoming banal and ended up losing their changeling powers and memories and perceptions and became, for all intents and purposes, human. Then, in 1969, humans landed on the moon. And it was broadcast to the planet. And people started believing in miracles again, right? They started dreaming again. And this fused the two worlds together again. Not all the way. The autumn world has taken quite a lot of damage at this point and is now tenuously connected to the mortal realm. But it's now possible to travel to and from those two places again. A lot of changelings woke up again, were like, oh shit, I'm a changeling, right? The the ones that were alive before had all passed, but essentially, like, people were just waking up one day going, oh shit, I'm a troll, right? I didn't know that. My parents must have been trolls and they didn't know, or there must be troll blood in my family somewhere, and I woke up as a troll. Just one day. And essentially a bunch of changelings had to figure out how to live, and that was their main goal for a long time, and they started establishing societies, and eventually the ruling class people who fled to Arcadia were like, oh shit, hey, look at that, we can go back to Earth again. So they showed up on Earth again, and they're like, oh hey guys, we're the ones in charge. And all the commentators were like, what fuck, no you're not, what the fuck are you talking about? And then there was a big war. The Sidhi, the ruling class changelings, ended up winning, and so feudal law was reestablished over the changelings. Most of them are fine with that these days. But tensions can still run high in a lot of places, but it's mostly accepted in most places. Now, a changeling game can be about literally anything, especially since they all have access to the dreaming. Literally anything can happen, and that's kind of the beauty of it. A changeling campaign can be about anything or nothing, and things can change from lighthearted and silly to extremely serious, like deadly serious at the drop of a hat. You might be on your character might be going on like an adventure, and things might be hunky-dory, and then all of a sudden, like, the dream that you're occupying turns into a nightmare, and you have to fight your way through an H.P. Lovecraft inspired hellscape. And there's just so many things that can happen, and so many things that just kind of do happen. Anyway, and that's kind of the gist of that. And that leads us to the final setting that will be occurring, Hunter the Reckoning. Hunters are empowered humans in much the same way mages are, except their whole purpose is to kill supernatural creatures. The kind of hunter you are kind of influences which ones and why, or even if you do any killing at all, because some of them do things like control them and make them repent for their sins or whatever. But essentially, they are the universe's way of correcting itself, because there's so many supernatural creatures now that it's beginning to the point where the world is going to tear itself apart. So hunters need to go around and fix that. Interestingly enough, this is quite possibly the one that has the most possibility of going off the rails in our mega campaign, because every time a hunter dies, 2 more are awakened.
Understandable.
If your hunter dies, you create 2 more, and you play them both. If one of those hunters dies, 2 more, you have to make 2 more and play both of them in addition to the other one. So you now have 3, and so on and so forth.
Okay.
It can get really complicated if you're not careful, and you have hunters dying left, right, and center. Joey might be running it, even though me, Craig, and Sky are the only ones playing. We might end up with 11 hunters running around that we're controlling. So we're going to try to make sure that doesn't happen. God, this situation feels familiar.
Too late.
Oh boy. Hopefully that info dump didn't give you too many headaches. But that is essentially what's happening. Now, Australia is an interesting place because of various reasons. First of all, as far as vampires go, there are several like major factions across the world, and by major factions I mean there is the Camarilla and the Sabbat, and then there are some minor ones that are only important in localized areas. But basically, they're everywhere you go. There is the Camarilla and there's the Sabbat, and they are very angry at each other all the time for various reasons. Now, in Australia is in a unique position because of the fact that there were so many sort of natives already there, and all these Europeans showed up and did what Europeans do, or did at least back in the day, and kind of just decided that they owned the place. And this was a bit of a problem for basically everyone who already lived there, and there were lots of wars that were fought. But the underworld in Australia is weird because it's completely separated from the rest of the world. Oddly. Much more so than other areas of the underworld are separated, because they all are to some degree, but Australia is like completely cut off. Now, this has a few interesting effects, but that's just the sort of first gist that you should get. Next, oddly, remember when I said that there was this whole sundering for the changelings as far as changelings were concerned, where the dreaming and the mortal world split.
Mm-hmm.
In Australia, that never happened. The dreaming and the mortal world stayed connected this whole time in Australia. When the European changelings showed up and did what Europeans do, they ended up changing that in the cities and the places they tend to go. However, in most of the rainforest and definitely the outback, that's still the case. You could just wander into the outback as a changeling and just be in the dreaming all of a sudden and not know how you got there, and that is both terrifying and confusing and awesome to explore as a concept in a game. There are also spirit like creatures wandering around, which can definitely lead to some cool things. Imagine like you're playing these games simultaneously yourself, right? And you have this group of changelings, and you've all set out into the outback, and you're hiding from all the mortals and the other supernatural creatures out there, and you see a motherfucking dragon of legend show up in the outback, and you're like, oh shit. So then you all get out there, and it's like, it's wreaking havoc, and you're like, but like, no one else can perceive it. So it's doing all this stuff, but they think it's like some sort of natural phenomenon, like a dust storm. So then you're like, we have to do battle with this dragon to save these people, right? So all of your changelings can run out there, and you battle with the dragon, and you defeat the dragon, and before anyone can question you, you're gone again, right? Now the game transitions over to the mages, right? And now you're playing as the mages and you like show up in the desert, and all of a sudden this wild dust devil comes out of nowhere. It's for weirdly catastrophic and starts destroying stuff left, right, and center, and it's like killing people. And you're like, how is this even happening? And all of a sudden, a bunch of wackos come out of nowhere, dressed in like nylon tracksuits and like covered in like cardboard boxes, wielding like cue sticks and like a baseball bat, and they just run at the storm. And they run into it, and then a few minutes later, the storm is just gone, and so are they. And you're like, what the fuck just happened? And that's the kind of things that can very easily happen in this giant project we are putting together.
Now, I mean, you can even, like, say, your mages find an artifact. They don't know what it does. They mess around with it, and they activate it. It seems to do nothing. Kind of forget about it. You go to change lanes, and some unknown group just summoned a bunch of stuff that you gotta go deal with.
Oh,
and the vampires are just chilling there, and all this stuff starts happening, and they see these crazy people running around. They're like, what's happening?
Oh, I mean, yeah, it can get like all over the place. And then you like when you switch over the hunters, you might see this whole scene from a distance and be like, well, our job is to kind of go kill supernatural creatures, but those supernatural creatures are in the process of killing another supernatural creature. So would it be better to just let them be and do their thing? Would that help us in the long run? And then you might decide, well, I guess it's not worth going out of a way to kill those supernatural creatures if they're also hunting other supernatural creatures and not harming mortals in any way. In fact, if we end up like coming across something important that we can't deal with, we might end up like contacting those people. And then so like when you get back around, then like something crazy ends happening, you send like a message to them, and then when you get back around the changelings, you get a message from this unknown group of humans who are like, hey, like we noticed that you are like, you know, hunting supernaturals, or like you're good at dealing with supernatural creatures. Here's one that showed up over here, and then they might send you off to do that. Yeah, but then what they don't know is that they're actually sending you after werewolves who are in the process of doing this other thing. So then as changelings, you show up in this, like, as these werewolves are, like, fighting off worm spawn and preventing the apocalypse. And you're like, oh, like, what's going on here? And then you kind of help them out. And then the werewolves are like, hey, you guys are pretty chill. Thanks for helping us out there. Hey, by the way, here's a few secrets of the universe. And then your changelings suddenly become way more enlightened and know way more about what's going on all of a sudden. Yeah. So these are just obviously some very small and like examples of the crazy things that can happen.
I think it'll be interesting.
I'm super excited for it, and Sky is also super excited for it.
I think you can definitely go places, do things.
Yeah. Like the political landscape for the vampires is crazy because like the Camarilla only control 2 cities, the Sabbat control 1, the Anarchs control 1, and one of them is completely independent. The Dreaming manifests weirdly for the changelings. There are like the Garu are like actually relatively few and far between because there are so many other like changing breeds there. So almost no one's even going to be a werewolf. People are going to be things like werebears and were-crocodiles and were-sharks and stuff like that who just kind of live there. And like were-spiders and like all this other, and like the were-snakes, and like there's just so many other were-creatures there that are doing stuff that you can play as and interact with. There's just like and that's just them. Like the hunters are going to show up and be and try to figure out who needs killing and what doesn't, because there are so many sort of like native supernatural creatures that they're like actually like beneficial, and they'll need to like parse that out. Let me figure out like who's doing what, and contend with some rather large threats, especially like out in the outback. Like things can get like crazy if they end up going there. And the technocracy has almost no hold whatsoever in Australia, so mages can kind of do almost whatever they want. But they have they have so many different things to contend with. Like they might not generate any hardly any paradox, and the technocracy might not be running around. But like they'll be like, oh, I'm going to activate this power, and then it just like it just does something completely different, and you're like, I wonder why that happened, and so you end up having all these weird supernatural phenomena happening around you. Instead of what you want to do. And yeah, and then the demons you just show up and are there. There's just like it's just all of this will be happening simultaneously, and hopefully we'll try to keep it as non-confusing as possible. And if we end up getting to a point where things get way too confusing, we'll probably create some sort of like it's like disambiguation videos, where we kind of go and explain some of the what's going on as much as we can.
Yeah, I gotcha.
In a way that's hopefully understandable.
It's like, it'll either work really well. It'll either intertwine and work really well. It'll become potentially just 6 completely isolated and separated campaigns that have very little to do with each other, or it'll all crash and burn within like one session.
I mean, quite possibly.
I really don't feel like this game is going anywhere.
Oh, it's going somewhere. I like this board here that I'm now having to interact with, where you've literally not moved anything. You've just had 2 knights that have left.
Oh yeah, I'm just kind of giving up on some of the boards. There's like 2 boards that I'm just slowly pulling pieces for to build up for some other stuff. What the? Queen is checkmating that guy.
Yeah, moving 3 realities up, 3 spaces diagonally up and right, and 3 turns backwards.
So it's moving northeast.
3 turns back, 3 realities up.
There.
Or down for you.
There. Because that one board has a gap in the pond. Oh,
yep.
Man.
Woo, Nelly.
And this is the point where you're like, I totally predicted all of that.
Nope, not at all. That was an accident.
No. And you realize that no, actually.
I'm not a liar. There are definitely times where I do mastermind cool plays in this game, but most of the cool plays that happen, for me, are accidental. I just try to move my pieces in a generally beneficial direction, for the most part, and rarely do have. Every once in a while, I'll have a specific move in mind, but generally, that's just how I'm trying to do things.
Stop doing what you're doing.
Don't.
Where did this castle come from? Wasn't here before.
Don't stop thinking about tomorrow. Don't stop. Yesterday is gone. Yesterday is gone.
Why have you done this? Moved a castle. You just went back to an old check.
Yep.
Why? What do you need off this board?
2 queens. 3 rooks. A check state. I'm not threatening that king.
Because you're not wrong.
This king. Ooh, good. I can't even take down. Yeah, okay. I suppose that was the obvious solution now, wasn't it? Now I'm threatening the current king. I like that we haven't explained anything about 5D chess, like, at all.
Nope.
Nope, you've created a split where he's safe. All right. Way up there.
Let's just... Just ignore that timeline down there.
You've given me the ability to create another timeline, though. It is your turn on one of these boards in the future if you choose to move it. Okay, so I have to respond to this board. Huh.
Why? Did you just...
Oh, yep. Yep. All right, and we're also going to do...
Huh.
We're also going to do... Oh. Yeah, this. Yeah.
You're going to move all the boards.
Now I'm involved. I'm just going to do one more.
Oh.
Should do
You just could have just split, didn't you?
this. Yes. I created one with that. I created a split of that board where you didn't really move anything before you moved stuff. Well, there's a couple of things moved on it. So there's a board near it that's similar. So the president's currently down here at those two boards. Only one of these boards even have a king on it of yours.
Nope.
The other one has already escaped out, so I can't threaten his present, but I can threaten his past. If I can engineer one of my rooks onto that spot, it seems unlikely. But if I could do it, that'd be an easy dub. But you have your
teleport through people because somehow there's random pawns missing off my prior boards.
Yeah, I wonder how that happened. Weird. When did that pawn move? That was like the.
What was that?
You didn't even move pawns for a while there. Well, you moved him there. So half these timelines have the pawn moved, and the other half you moved that knight instead.
Okay, let's see. This thing?
You timeline traveled the knight out and then back in, and then out again. And that's the one where you didn't move anything for a long time. Except to move pieces in and out as a stepping stone. I see. Okay. Interesting. Oh, okay. So you're creating a split where you're creating two splits where you've taken that bishop. I mean, there's still a timeline where... Oh, no, because that'll put you in check. What are you doing?
Nothing.
You know you've already put yourself in check, right? Twice, 3 times.
Have I?
Yeah, there you go.
Not watching where I was looking.
You're just trying to create as many splits as you could.
No, I have a thought.
Okay. are you? See, now I could choose to ignore most of those, but...
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Yes, you should definitely ignore all of those.
Wait.
It just looks beautiful, though, doesn't it? Just all
What are
those
you,
black lines.
what are you doing? I like how on this board, essentially, like the only one in the present now, almost nothing has happened on this board. Like one queen is developed, and you're like on my side, and one bishop by a small margin on your side. I just have an extra queen and an extra rook, and you have an extra bishop.
You have 2 extra pawns on this one. You're up 2 pawns with an extra queen and an extra rook. I'm Oh, you're making it my turn.
Uh-huh. You have 2 boards in the present.
You have 2. This one is currently having issue.
What the I
cannot do that.
I'll kill you.
How does... Can't. Dang it, you've locked that board out for me.
Yeah, I've gotten that timeline pretty well on lock in the past. Which sounds like I've lost the lock. However, if I can get back to it, then I haven't. What the fuck are you doing? You've now moved the present up to this nonsense. So how many of these boards am I required to respond to? I guess
anything that has the purple lines through it is active. All the black ones are mine.
Gotcha. So I don't. So I can choose to ignore.
Oh yeah.
Those. Okay. Jesus Christ. Okay. We are going to move this here. We're going to move this. Here. We're going to move this here.
Yeah, one more or 2 more. I physically can't actually zoom out anymore. Oh, I guess it just has just enough to view though.
Still in the present. Oh, this one down here. Okay. So we're gonna move her boy.
Having fun?
Or move this up here.
You lose.
What?
Which one did you get me in check with?
Oh.
Whew, that queen.
Yeah.
The powerhouse. What was this one doing?
Yeah, I was just creating a lot of splits with extra queens in it, trying to get them to the back line. Oh, I also had you check up here as well.
My goal was hopefully...
Oh, that queen. Oh, geez, that queen's putting like four different kings in check.
Yeah.
2, 4, 5.
Although late as it was to eradicate the kings so that you would have to try and do time jumps, right?
Yeah.
And then start filling the board with pawns just running as blockers, like building my passed boards with just walls of blockers. So that
Oh.
I got we would get to the point where you could physically get no piece besides a knight to the past, to anywhere close where my kings were. I just couldn't.
Oh, I see.
It just got to the point where it was so late in the game that there were so many other active splits that I figured eventually it was gonna be like this, where just one of your pieces was gonna magically hit like 1,000 kings, and there was nothing I could do about it. But that was the gameplay, because I was down. You had so many freaking queens, and I was down so many of my key pieces.
Yeah, I took every opportunity that you gave me by creating a split of your own to create a split with extra queens in it.
Now, I don't know if you noticed, I had been deliberately like knocking out your knights.
Oh,
I was going after your knights because the
that
goal
makes sense.
was eventually to make it to where I could just had none of your straight line runners would be able to move into the past.
Oh, I see. That was an
I
interesting
would
thought.
take what knights I had that I had built. A couple of my boards had like 3 to 4 knights on them at one point.
I see. So you're taking my advantage taking of creating splits off of you to make queens to create splits of extra splits of your own for extra pawns and with less of my knights. I see. It was decent gameplay, but you're right. It was a little too late in the game, and I had enough lines in these ones where you'd already moved too many pieces out to put your past kings in check with my queens.
Yeah, because I remember one of the previous games we had played forever ago. I had done that where I just got rid of all my kings, but I didn't have enough pieces left to block it. But if I have enough pieces and I can build a history of walls, then you can never get to the kings.
Yeah, that was a game where you had no present kings for me to attack at all. They'd all been shunted into dead timelines.
They were way in the past, and it took you forever to get one lined up.
Yeah, but the spaces that they used to occupy were still attackable. And I eventually got there. I remember that one. Yeah, God, I love this game. The strategies are incredible. There's so many.
I think my bread is cashed out.
That's fine. It was an hour 47-minute recording where I talked about World of the Darkness pretty much the whole time, and we played 5D chess.
Two fantastic things to do at the same time.
Oh man, boy, it wasn't taxing on my mind at all. Let me tell you. So if you watch,
I won the first game so easily.
Yeah. So if you watch this, I'm sorry, but that's sort of like an update on stuff that's coming in the future. I'm still working on getting Persona working again. We still have some episodes in reserve that I'm putting out at a slower rate. This will probably go up tonight, but tonight that I'm recording this at.
And also be on the lookout for potentially other new things that we don't yet know but might show up.
Yeah, we do definitely want to do more series. Other people have expressed interest in putting series on the channel, but current limitations are restricting them for the moment. But those might be disappearing soon. Yeah, who knows what'll crop up. We are going to probably play a couple more multiplayer games. We might start up a series in another game to watch. I was looking at some games to run on an emulator. We haven't decided on anything yet. We also
those don't crash.
Yeah, we also might do Danganronpa.
That probably won't crash.
Oh boy, yeah, all the
decisions that we're making are not the wisest.
Yeah, all the Atlas Steam ports.
All the ports and emulator ran games.
Yeah, for sure. I don't see what could possibly go wrong. But yeah, those are just the future for the channel. I mean, pretty much beyond that, we don't know. But there will be stuff in the future, so keep an eye out. Do you have any parting advice for for anyone?
If you ever get a chance, learn chess. It's one thing I wish I did when I was younger. because you can always use it for fun, and then you could just like, what's that? Flex on friends, flex on your friends when you know how to play chess. So you're like, oh yeah, I just I
I
passively
dabble.
play because everybody knows how the pieces move, but if you know like just enough of like how to start your board and then progress your board,
Mm-hmm.
and then you just be like, oh yeah,
Yeah.
oh we'll play a chess game, and whoever loses has to pay for lunch today, and you get a bunch of free food.
You don't need to be a grandmaster,
You
but
just need to
just
be better than everyone else.
yeah, you don't need to be better than the 1%, but you only need about 1% to be better than the 99%. All right. Thanks for watching.